Hey guys, today I'll be making a prediction for the 2024 presidential election between Vice President Kamala Harris and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. So looking at these two candidates, they are both the frontrunner for their respective parties' nominations, with the exception of the two 2020 nominees. So for the Republican Party here, Donald Trump does lead in terms of his odds of winning the 2024 GOP nomination for a third time in a row. However, Ron DeSantis is the only major candidate in this race right now, with the exception of Trump. He has a 27% chance of winning it right now. He actually led in this market a while back. However, he has consistently stayed in that second place position now for almost a year. For the Democratic nomination, Joe Biden, the incumbent president, is of course the front runner. He is followed by Kamala Harris, who is followed by Pete Buttigieg, but Pete Buttigieg is still miles short of Kamala Harris's 27% chance right now. And this is because Pete Buttigieg, there have been more talks of him running and potentially challenging Harris for the 2024 Democratic nomination if Joe Biden does not run for re-election. Now, for the Democratic Party, I think that they really do suffer right now from a lack of viable candidates to run for them nationwide for the presidency in 4 years. I think that for the GOP, they have a whole list of possible nominees. All of these being major Trump Republicans, with the exception of Nikki Haley and Mitt Romney, who really does not have a chance. But the Republican Party has a huge list of potential nominees, even if Donald Trump does not run in 2024. However, for the Democratic nomination, if you really look at this list, Hillary Clinton is not going to run. Bernie Sanders is too old to run. Elizabeth Warren, is the same age as Biden almost, and she's probably not going to run again in 2024. AOC is a little bit young. She will technically be barely able to run in 2024, but I think it's very, very unlikely. So really, you have these top three candidates, with the first one being, the oldest president in American history. So I think that for the Democratic nomination right now, these top three candidates are it in terms of your possible choices. Of course, someone can come out and surprise us like Obama did in 2008 or like Bill Clinton did in 1992. But as of right now, there are only really three. I think that out of this entire list of candidates, every single one of them would be a very poor choice to put on the national level against, a Republican for the presidency, with the exception of Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden really is the only viable candidate that the Democratic Party has right now. I think that if they put up Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg, I think it's going to be almost, a definite loss, against either of these two GOP frontrunners. So for the Democratic nomination, Kamala Harris has stayed in second place for a while now, just like Ron DeSantis. And because of these similarities, that's why I'm making this prediction between the two of them in this video. So I'm going to start off by filling in the solid states I have for both Kamala Harris and Ron DeSantis. So for Kamala Harris, California, Hawaii, New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, the District of Columbia, and the state of Maryland. So this gives her 113 electoral votes from her solid states. Now for Ron DeSantis, we have many of them here as well, in the middle of the country mostly, and I will also be giving him the 1st district, the 3rd district, as well as the at-large vote in Nebraska as solid. The 3rd district and at-large vote in Nebraska was solid for Trump, and the 1st district will most likely be solid for Trump or for DeSantis in 2024 against Kamala Harris. Kansas, Missouri, I think these two states will be narrowly solid, as well as Mississippi, but still margins of over 15%, and these other southern states I will also classify as solid for the GOP, and this gives Ron DeSantis 102 electoral votes from his solid states to 113 for Kamala Harris. And so before I categorize the likely states for both of these candidates, I do want to take a look at some head-to-head polling between the two individuals. Right now, there have been two polls released. The first one released in late April, with Kamala Harris leading by 13%, but this most recent poll released just last month, at the end of the month of October, Ron DeSantis actually led by 2 points over the vice president. Kamala Harris also performs very, very poorly against Donald Trump in basically every single poll that has been released between the two since the month of May. And just in general, Kamala Harris polls much worse than Joe Biden in these head-to-head polls, and she is also one of the most unpopular vice presidents in modern history. So filling in the likely states, starting off with Kamala Harris, these are all states that I think that she really is without a doubt going to win, even though the margins may not be as solid. States of Washington, Oregon going to go to her, Illinois as well, the 1st district of Maine, as well as the states of Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Connecticut. So this does put her up at 181 electoral votes, and I'm also going to include the state of Colorado, which puts her at 191. So looking at these states, I mean, 2020, Joe Biden won Washington by 19, 16 in Oregon, so it's definitely going to go down for Kamala Harris, especially against Ron DeSantis. In Rhode Island as well as Connecticut, I think the margin can go down. If you do look at Hillary Clinton's margin from 2016, I mean, many of these states, Rhode Island was barely solid, and so is Washington for Hillary Clinton. Illinois, only 17%. So I think Kamala Harris can drive that margin down a little bit in this scenario. Delaware, only 11 points. And so this gives her 191 electoral votes, and in the state of Colorado, Joe Biden won this state by 13.5%. 2016, he was won by Hillary Clinton by 4.9. I think Kamala Harris will be able to meet them somewhere in the middle at around 9 to 10 percentage points. Now, for Ron DeSantis, he has quite a few likely states, starting off with the state of Alaska. I don't think it's going to go back to solid. The last time this state voted solid for the GOP was in 2008, and the state has voted for the Republican Party, I mean, for a very long time. The last time a Democrat won was in 1964 with the election or the re-election of Lyndon B. Johnson, who won 486 electoral votes, the most for any Democrat in history. So this really was the last time the state of Alaska had ever voted for the Democratic Party, and he was running against a severe racist in Barry Goldwater. So it's not too surprising, but since then the state of Alaska has never voted for the Democratic Party on the presidential level, but they do vote for Democratic and independent governors from time to time. So in 2012, it voted for Mitt Romney by 14%. Trump, 14.7 in Alaska in 2016, but 2020, this margin dropped all the way down to 10. I don't think it's going to go up to over 15, but I do think that he'll be able to win it by at least 7 percentage points. But I think he will do a little better than Trump. Trump's 2020 margin here at least. I will also be giving Ron DeSantis the state of Texas and its 40 electoral votes with likely margin. This is another state that Trump performed pretty poorly in. He only won by 5.6 in 2020. You go to 2012, it was 15.8 for Mitt Romney, and in 2016, it was 9 percentage points. So in the state of Texas, definitely Donald Trump was a pretty poor candidate here. He made it go all the way down to lean for the GOP for the first time in decades. But I do think that in 2024, in this scenario with Ron DeSantis on the ballot, he will be able to push that margin up a couple of percentage points and make it, again, a likely state. The state of South Carolina and its 9 electoral votes will also be likely, along with Indiana. I think that DeSantis will just be a little bit short of that 15% margin, but it will be an almost definite win for him in both of these states, but the margin will be a little bit lower. We also have the 2nd District of Maine. Nothing too surprising here. Redistricting will help the Democratic Party a little, or will help the GOP a little bit more in the 2nd District, as well as the 1st District. So, it will help the Republican Party in the 1st District, but a little bit less in the 2nd District as a result of redistricting. But nonetheless, it will be one for each party. And the final 2 likely states for the Republican nominee here is the states of Iowa and Ohio, 6 and 7 electoral votes. I think that he will barely be able to hold on to these 2 states with likely margins. Trump won both of them by around 8 to 9% in both 2016 and 2020. I don't think Ron DeSantis' margin would go down too much if it was against Joe Biden. I think definitely lean classification because Trump does do a lot better in the Rust Belt. But for Ron DeSantis against Kamala Harris, I think that a likely categorization is pretty reasonable. And so this puts Kamala Harris at 191 electoral votes and Ron DeSantis at 189. So with their likely and solid states filled up, the 2 candidates are pretty evenly matched at this point. I'm now going to fill in the lean states, starting off with the lean states actually for Ron DeSantis. There are quite a few of them, so I'm going to start off with the state of Alaska. It's 11 electoral votes. I think Ron DeSantis will be able to flip the state of Alaska back. In 2020, of course, Donald Trump lost the state for the GOP for the first time since 1996, and Joe Biden won by 0.3%. So this is a state that is continuously shifting more and more to the left. The last time I voted for the Democratic Party was in 1996, of course. And then in 2008, it voted for John McCain by 8.5, even against Barack Obama. That really just shows how much the state has changed. 9.1 in 2012, 2016, 3.5, and then it went blue finally in 2020. So I mean, even though they have 2 Democratic senators there now, as well as, voting for Joe Biden on the presidential level, it is still definitely a state that the GOP can almost definitely win back. And I think that in 2024 against Kamala Harris, Ron DeSantis will be able to do this. So this will be a lean state for him, and the neighboring New Mexico I will classify as lean for Kamala Harris. I think the margin will be a little bit lower than 7%, but I don't think Ron DeSantis really stands a chance there anyways. The state of Virginia will also go to Kamala Harris, 13 electoral votes. I think that it will stay within the lean category there. I don't think it'll go under 2%. Biden won it by 10.1%. Hillary Clinton, even though she went with Tim Kaine, a former governor of the state and senator from the state, when he ran in 2016 as her running mate, she only won the state by 5.3%. So Kamala Harris, I'm not too I don't think she's going to do too well there, but I think that she will be able to carry it nonetheless. Even though Glenn Youngkin won the governorship there, that really isn't going to change the fact that on the national level, the state of Virginia is still more liberal than it is conservative. Although, you know, before the 2000s, it was definitely not this way. So 13 electoral votes for Kamala Harris. We also have the state of New Hampshire, and it's 4 electoral votes I will categorize for the vice president. I think the state of New Hampshire will be a state that she does much worse than Joe Biden in. I don't think she'll do as bad as the 0.4 margin for Hillary Clinton in 2016, but I think that it will, you know, nonetheless be a pretty big drop from the margin we saw for Joe Biden. And the final lean state for Kamala Harris, we have the state of Maine at large. Its 2 electoral votes will go to Kamala Harris, and I think this is a pretty fair categorization for the at-large vote there in Maine. Joe Biden won in 2020 by 9.1. Hillary Clinton only won the state by 2.9% in the state of Maine. So this really was a pretty poor margin for her. I think Kamala Harris will again meet them somewhere in the middle, but I don't think that it's going to go for Ron DeSantis at all. The at-large vote in Maine is still a lot more liberal than it is Republican, and that margin from Hillary Clinton really was a very, very weak one in 2016. So with all of her solid, lean, and likely states filled in, Kamala Harris 215 electoral votes, but we have quite a few lean states left for Ron DeSantis. So I'm going to start off with the state of North Carolina. So this has put DeSantis now in the lead. This is a state that the Democratic Party has been trying to win for a very long time. They were able to win it in 2008 with Barack Obama winning it by 0.3%, but that was the only time that the Democratic Party ever won the state of North Carolina on the presidential level since the election of 1976 and the election of Jimmy Carter. So since Jimmy Carter won the state of North Carolina by 11 points in 1976, the state of North Carolina has never voted for the Democratic Party on the presidential level ever again. In 2008, that was or not ever again, but with the exception of 2008. 2020, Joe Biden came pretty close, 1.3% after Clinton's margin of 3.7. So in 2020, Joe Biden got pretty close. He was expected to actually win the state according to basically all polling numbers. He still did come up short. The vote basically switched on him at the end. But 16 electoral votes, it will definitely go to Ron DeSantis against Kamala Harris in this scenario. Ron DeSantis' home state of Florida will also be lean. I don't think this should be too surprising. It's 30 electoral votes I have for the governor, and I mean, in the state of Florida, this is one that Ron DeSantis will be able to do pretty well in. I think better than Donald Trump's 30.4% margin in this, pretty competitive state most of the time. 2020, Donald Trump definitely did very, very well here. He did better than both of Obama's margins when he ran for president, and better than Bush's margins here as well. So Donald Trump definitely did very, very good in the state of Florida, considering how typically competitive it is. I think Ron DeSantis can do better as the governor of the state. He will pretty easily win re-election in 2022, and I think that 2024 he'll be able to carry the state of Florida, no doubt about that. And finally, the final lean state I have on this map for him is the state of Wisconsin and its 10 electoral votes, putting Ron DeSantis up at 256 electoral votes. I think that he will be able to flip the state of Wisconsin and say that Joe Biden won by 0.63%. And this is the only state in the upper Rust Belt that I have as lean for Ron DeSantis, because I do think that this is the most conservative out of the 3 states here in the blue wall. So now moving on to the tilt states, I'm going to start off by giving Kamala Harris the state of Minnesota. This is a state that Hillary Clinton won by 1.5% in 2016, and the state with the longest Democratic voting streak, as of course it was the only state that did not vote for Ronald Reagan in 1984. So the state of Minnesota, I think it will stay blue even under Kamala Harris, but by a very, very small margin of less than 2%. And now for the rest of the Rust Belt here, I have both of these states as being tilt for the GOP. I think that Ron DeSantis will be able to win back both Michigan and Pennsylvania following Trump's loss of them in 2020. I think it will be a pretty competitive race there, and I do think that it will be very difficult for him because Donald Trump does does typically do very well in this area, much better than other Republicans in the past. He's the only Republican to win these 3 states, in over 20 years. And I think 2022, Ron DeSantis will be able to flip all 3 of them back, only because I think that Kamala Harris will be a very weak candidate. At this point, these 3 states are shifting to the right, as with the rest of the Rust Belt, but they are, at their core, still more Democratic than they are Republican, at least at this point in time, and that was shown in the 2020 election results, and the fact that Donald Trump only barely won these states. If you look at 2012, they were all lean, at least, for Barack Obama, and in 2008, Michigan was even solid for the former president. So this puts Ron DeSantis up at 290 electoral votes. I'm also going to give him Nevada. This is just to say that the Democratic Party has not been performing in too well. They won this state by 2.4% in 2016 and 2020, after Barack Obama won it by 12.5 in 2008. So this was definitely, this state is definitely not trending more and more to the left. In 2004, it was won by Bush, so this was a pretty big swing for Barack Obama of 15%, but in 2020 the state was only won by 2.4 by his vice president. So in Nevada, 6 electoral votes I will have for Ron DeSantis, as well as the 16 from the state of Georgia and the 1 from the 2nd district of Nebraska that I do think Ron DeSantis will be able to flip back. And in Georgia, 16 electoral votes. I think Kamala Harris will be able to appeal, especially to the African-American vote here, in the fact that she would also be the first female president in American history. But the thing is that she is just not popular at all. And Ron DeSantis, I think, will still be able to defeat her in the state of Georgia and win its 16 electoral votes. So this is my prediction between Kamala Harris and Ron DeSantis: 225 for the vice president to 313 for the governor. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like it down below if you enjoyed it. Comment down below who you think would win in this 2024 matchup. Subscribe to my channel if you have not, and I'll see you guys in the next video.